Good evening. I'm Kelly Wright. Thanks for joining me as we spend the next hour together. I hope you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family because you matter. My opening observations tonight: life truly does matter for you, your family, everyone. Yet it was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who once stated, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And certainly, we are seeing a threat to justice in the case of Breonna Taylor. We'll be talking about that tonight. We're also seeing that injustice is taking place not only in America, but in other countries. Case in point, Azerbaijan, where the Armenian people are facing another round of ethnic cleansing, and many of them are living in fear about what lay ahead. Tonight, we'll talk to an Armenian woman who lives here in America, and she'll recount her struggles in growing up and fleeing that area because of the threat of genocide. That's coming up. But let me remind you in these opening observations, it was Mandela, Nelson Mandela, who once stated, "To deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity." And those are my opening observations. Tonight's top story coming out of Washington: Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation hearing enters day 2 as Republican and Democrat senators of the Senate Judiciary Committee enter their second day of confirmation hearings for President Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Amy Coney Barrett. They talked about a wide range of topics, including Roe versus Wade, as well as the Affordable Health Care Act.
That's got nothing to do with this hearing. It's got everything to do with politics. We on this side do not believe Obamacare is the best way to provide quality health care over time. Our friends on the other side, this is a placeholder for single-payer health care. If you don't believe me, just ask them. So that's the fight going into 2020. How's it feel to be nominated for the Supreme Court of the United States?
Well, Senator, I've tried to be on a media blackout for the sake of my mental health, but you can't keep yourself walled off from everything, and I'm aware of a lot of the caricatures that are floating around. So I think what I would like to say in response to that question is that, look, I've made distinct choices. I've decided to pursue a career and have a large family. I have a multiracial family. Our faith is important to us. All of those things are true, but they are my choices. And in my personal interactions with people, I have a life brimming with people who've made different choices, and I've never tried in my personal life to impose my choices on them. And the same is true professionally. I apply the law. And Senator, I think I should say why I'm sitting in this seat in response to that question, too. Why I've agreed to be here, because I don't think it's any secret to any of you or to the American people that this is a really difficult, some might say excruciating process. And Jesse and I had a very brief amount of time to make a decision with momentous consequences for our family. We knew that our lives would be combed over for any negative detail. We knew that our faith would be caricatured. We knew our family would be attacked. And so we had to decide whether those difficulties would be worth it, because what sane person would go through that if there wasn't a benefit on the other side? And the benefit, I think, is that I'm committed to the rule of law and the role of the Supreme Court in dispensing equal justice for all. And I'm not the only person who could do this job, but I was asked, and it would be difficult for anyone. So why should I say someone else should do the difficulty? If the difficulty is the only reason to say no, I should serve my country. And my family's all in on that because they share my belief in the rule of law.
Have you seen the George Floyd video?
I have.
What impact did it have on you?
Senator, as you might imagine, given that I have 2 black children, that was very, very personal for my family. Jesse was with the boys on a camping trip out in South Dakota, so I was there, and my 17-year-old daughter, Vivian, who's adopted from Haiti, all of this was erupting. It was very difficult for her. We wept together in my room, and then it was also difficult for my daughter, Juliet, who's 10. I had to try to explain some of this to them. I mean, my children to this point in their lives have had the benefit of growing up in a cocoon where they have not yet experienced hatred or violence. And for Vivian, you know, to understand that there would be a risk to her brother or the son she might have one day of that kind of brutality has been an ongoing conversation. It's a difficult one for us, like it is for Americans all over the country.
When we return, we'll talk more about Amy Coney Barrett with our legal analyst, Terry Austin. That's next. And welcome back to the program. So let's continue to talk about what's happening in the Senate Judiciary Committee as it pertains to the nomination, if you will, to the Supreme Court of Judge Amy Coney Barrett. Terry Austin joins us now. She's a legal analyst and also political analyst as well. What's going on here? What are we seeing in terms of the Democrats trying to block this, and they really don't have the means to do so?
Well, that's exactly right, Kelly. They don't have the means to do so. They know they are outnumbered, at least as far as the number of votes are concerned. But what I think they're trying to do is impress upon the citizens of the United States how to vote, making sure that they are asking questions, which will indicate how the judge will ultimately vote if she is ultimately confirmed as the next Supreme Court justice. So they are focusing on questions about healthcare. And you heard many details about how many people already right now are making sure that they are protected under ACA or Obamacare. And there are millions of people who have pre-existing conditions. So what we're doing right now is making sure that the right questions are asked so people will understand, listen, if we don't vote the right way, if we don't make sure that Biden gets into office, we're not going to have health care. We may lose the right to abortion. We may not have the right to marry as far as the LGBTQ community is concerned. So I think the strategy is to make sure that the American vote knows what's going on in terms of these specific issues so they can get to the polls, they can get and they vote in Biden instead of making sure that, Trump is reelected and he could continue to do things like he's trying to do to have the court weighted on a conservative side.
And to that point, are you satisfied with the answers that she gave with regard to the Affordable Care Act, as well as other matters that are so important to Democrats, and even the answers that she gave about same-sex marriage?
You know, it's interesting because she is excellent. One of the things that she did during the hearing, she was asked by one of the Republican senators, all of us here have notebooks. We're using all of our resources, 3-ring binders, et cetera, to refresh our recollection. What do you have in front of you? And he must have known what she had in front of her because she, lifted up a blank note page and it was filled with nothing because everything that she said was from her mind, from the top of her head, from her knowledge. And so I thought she answered questions very well. I thought that she was extremely well prepared. I think that she came across as forthright, and I think she said all the right things. One of the things that she was probably prepped to do is to make sure that she didn't decide to answer any question, giving any inclination of what she might have to say or how she might ultimately vote. And in fact, she quoted Ginsburg and said that she didn't want to have any previews, no hints, no forecast as to what her ultimate decisions might be. So she was very good at that. And, I think she did extremely well. I don't think she could have done much better as far as that was concerned. So she managed to talk about cases. She also avoided answers. She said some things like she didn't want to be a legal pundit. that she couldn't opine on cases that she didn't have all of the facts about. So she was very good at skirting the answers. She didn't want what happened to Bork, people know that, he answered questions. He said how he might vote if he were ultimately confirmed. And she was very careful not to do that. So she's learned the lesson, I think, that most of the subsequent Supreme Court justices have learned, not to really answer the question as to how you will ultimately vote.
Yeah, and I think to that end, it showed wisdom on her part to not engaged in the political circus that's going on there on Capitol Hill, and of course throughout the nation at large. A lot of people are against her just because President Trump picked her. But look, if this wasn't a President Trump pick, a lot of people on surface, Terry, would likely say, she has something here. Let's continue to examine her and listen to what she has to say, whether she's conservative or liberal, especially when it came to the question or the answer that she gave to Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, who asked her about, did you see the George Floyd murder? And
Exactly.
her answer was, well, you take it from there. What did you think her answer was?
I thought her answer was excellent. I mean, she is personally the type of person that you want on the Supreme Court. She is a very faithful person. She is a very religious person. She has 7 children. 2 of them are adopted and they are Black children. So she's the type of person who you would think is open-minded. And she said, yes, in fact, we did see that. And 2 of my children cried. Her older Black daughter from Haiti was one of the ones who said, that it really affected her. And one of her younger daughters was afraid that it would affect her and her life and her brother. And so I think the entire family was affected. She said that I believe she said they cried and they prayed. And, it just makes you realize that underneath all of it, she is human and she is the type of person you would want to be on the Supreme Court. She's brilliant and she's human. And what we don't know, though, is how she will vote. She has said repeatedly that no one has told her how she must vote on these cases. And so hopefully she will keep an open mind, but we're all human. And frankly, the fact that she has such conservative views and she's written before about Roe v. Wade, she's written before about Obamacare. And so, you have to think that she might in fact vote against, what we already know is precedent. And I think that's what the American people have to worry about, whether or not she's going to be ultra conservative or whether or not she's going to let the law of the land stand.
I'm talking to Terry Austin, legal analyst for the Kelly Wright Show. When we return, I'd like to talk to you about Breonna Taylor and the situation going on there in light of what her boyfriend has stated just recently on a different network. We're back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. Legal analyst Terry Austin joins me, and we are talking about what's happening on the Supreme Court, or at least the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. But now we want to talk about what's happening in Louisville, Kentucky, and that's the Breonna Taylor case. Terry, as you know, the Attorney General of Kentucky, Daniel Cameron, has blocked a juror from the grand jury from speaking. What's that all about? And can he really get away with that to stop this juror from coming forward to express his or her concerns about what unfolded in that grand jury?
It's very interesting because generally speaking, grand jury proceedings are held in secret, and that's to protect the system. But we know already that a grand juror has come out to talk about the fact that Attorney General Cameron misstated, misquoted what actually occurred. And that's why we are seeing these records now being produced. We have audio that has been produced already regarding what's going on. And the grand juror wants additional information to come out because, in fact, they did not present, the prosecution, the attorney general did not present all of the information. They only presented the information as it related to the wanton endangerment for Hankinson, who shot wildly and could have injured the neighbors in the apartments nearby. There wasn't any information presented, or at least they did not focus on whether or not Hankinson, Cosgrove, or Mattingly should be charged even with manslaughter if they didn't want to say murder, because these officers have some immunity because they are there doing their work, doing their business. So it was very disappointing, I think, to this particular grand juror. And this juror has already made the motion to have exposed what occurred, the audio, the video, the documents, and everything that occurred throughout the proceeding. So Cameron, to answer your question, can try to move to keep this grand juror quiet. But I do think that all will come out in the light. We've already had the audio. I think we're going to see the rest of the documents that have been requested now, because the end result, I think, was so controversial. We've had all of these riots. We've had people talking about the fact this happened March 13th. And, we just got the indictment. I think it was in September. So, and the indictment only was against Hankinson again, and it had nothing to do with Breonna's death. It had to do with, recklessness for other people who were not injured. And I think the community is very angry about that. And I think that at the end of the day, we are going to have transparency. We've already had a bit of transparency. And I don't think that Daniel Cameron will be able to shut down this particular juror who wants to talk.
Now, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, spoke exclusively just recently to CBS News. And he also explained that he is sure that he heard commotion, but he heard no one identifying themselves as police, as those officers barged in, broke in, pushed their way in with what would, based on his testimony, would be a no-knock entry into Breonna Taylor's apartment. And he thereby opened fire with a warning shot. So to that end, we're still seeing and hearing the same thing, that there was no announcement that police open up.
Well, that's exactly right, Kelly. And think about it. If Kenneth Walker thought that the police were at his door, storming his door, he heard knocks, he didn't hear voices, would he come to the door with a gun? He would be a dead man. So he did not hear the officers say, police, open up, because had he heard that, he would have said, wait, hold on, I will open up.
Yeah.
The other issue is what was presented to the grand jury. They claim they have one witness who heard the police identify themselves. There are a dozen other witnesses who did not. Did the grand jury hear that? We won't know that until all of that is released. So there is a discrepancy. And as far as I'm concerned, the discrepancy works to the advantage of Kenneth Walker. In other words, Kenneth Walker's comments make more sense based on what the current evidence that we've been told, because he wouldn't have responded the way he did. And there were other witnesses who said they did not hear the police identify themselves. So ultimately, when this does go to trial, that will be a question of fact, a question of evidence. But again, we don't even have a charge as it relates to the death of Breonna Taylor.
Absolutely. And that is the heartbreak that the citizens of Louisville are experiencing. And more deeply, it's the heartbreak of her family. I spoke to her cousin recently, who described Breonna Taylor as being the light of that family. And a $12 million wrongful death situation is not a settlement because it does not bring her back. To that end, you as an attorney looking at the legal system, did the legal system fail Breonna Taylor here?
Absolutely. I mean, I think from a civil standpoint, it was a good settlement. But to your point, no amount of money in the world is going to bring her back. And her mother does not have her daughter. And for your child to die before you do is something that is unthinkable. And no amount of money can change that. As far as the criminal system is concerned, there's no question that it has failed the family and it has failed the community, because obviously we don't want officers to be reckless, but we also want them to be accountable. And there has been no accountability here for the officers who killed Breonna Taylor. And until we start seeing accountability for that, we're not going to change anything. Everyone is asking, why do we still see these cases? Yes, there has been some reform. There is the Breonna Taylor law, no knock warrants are banned. You are seeing, for instance, here in New York State, Governor Cuomo said that you have to have the records transparent as far as the police officers are concerned. So we are seeing things happening, but nothing is changing. We're still continuing to see people get shot, Black men particularly, and Black women, but particularly Black men, at the hands of police officers. And until those individual police officers are themselves held accountable, I think we're going to continue to see, sadly, other cases of where our men are dying at the hands of police officers.
Terry Austin, legal analyst, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you as always. And unfortunately, we may be talking about these cases for a while, but we'll keep saying their names to effectuate some change. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Great to be with you.
We're coming back with much more. In fact, when we do return, we'll look at Azerbaijan and how Armenian citizens there are concerned that genocide could be on the rise. What does that mean for people here in America? We'll talk to an Armenian American next. Welcome back to the program. So I want to talk about something else that's going on throughout the world. As you know, here in America, we've been focused on what's happening with the Supreme Court nomination, what's also happening with all the things pertaining to racial division and political division as it relates to Black Lives Matter, and of course, the election that's coming up, the coronavirus pandemic, and the disruption that it's caused. But globally, there are a lot of concerns that each and every one of us should have, particularly something very sinister that seems to be rearing its ugly head again. It's better known as genocide. The Armenian genocide that took place was an attempt to wipe out an entire people. And joining me now is Lucia Moon. She is from Azerbaijan and she is Armenian. And she witnessed the effects of that genocide while growing up there. She lives in California now, or she is studying for her doctorate in psychology. You have stated that the plight of the Armenian people is an example of what's at stake for all people, including Black lives here in America, Christian communities globally as well. Why do you believe this? What's unfolding in Armenia that should be a telltale sign that something sinister like genocide is happening there?
Armenia is the first Christian country in the world. We accepted Christianity as a state religion in 301 AD. Armenia is geographically surrounded by all the Muslim countries. the genocide we've experienced was from Muslim Turks. The pogroms in '88, I have seen with my own eyes. That's why I'm a former refugee from Azerbaijan. Also happened from Muslims or Azeris. The situation in Nagorno-Karabakh that is happening right now is a result of a criminal alliance of Azerbaijan, Turkey, and in addition to that, they hired Syrian terrorists, ISIS, so who are also Muslims. So this attack is not an attack on Armenians. This is an attack on Christianity. Right now, attacking Armenia and at the level they do, in addition with terrorists being a major part of the game at this point, is pretty much a slap in the face of the entire Christian community. We are all Armenians right now, just like we were all blacks a few months ago. Just like I was next to my brothers and sisters during the protests of Black Lives Matter, because an unfairness happened.
Take me back to what it was like before you came to America while growing up in Azerbaijan as an Armenian person of Armenian descent.
When I left Azerbaijan, I was 9 years old. This is when everything started. And I remember myself hiding. I remember my dad taking barbecue skewers and putting something on the side of it and just hiding them everywhere in the corner of the room. And then he would tell us, if somebody comes in, you just take it and you just stick it into a person. And to me, to a 9-year-old, this was horrific. Why? Until this day, I cannot associate barbecue skewers with barbecue, because to me, the memory that I have is that it's a weapon. But we were trying to survive. We knew that people would knock on the door, and because they knocked on our neighbor's door, they intruded, they raped, they're killed. So by miracle, we were able to escape. We didn't know who's going to save us, who's going to betray us, who's going to kill us. And that, when I escaped Azerbaijan, we were wandering all over the former Soviet Union. I don't even remember how many schools I've changed. My entire childhood until I arrived to America was, a refugee lifestyle.
What can America do in terms of its leadership to intervene, and how can they best save the lives of so many Armenians who are now drawing fire, the bombings, and just the attacks upon them over land and over racial hostilities and ethnic hostilities? How do you bring peace or intervention into this situation? What are you asking the president to do?
First of all, I am a supporter of our president. I am planning to vote for him this November. And I know a lot of Armenians are too. But I also know that America can never be great without integrity-based decisions. So I really, really hope that Mr. Trump will redefine politics in a way so that it adapts universal meaning, so that other leaders, world leaders, would follow his definition. I want him to set the gold standard of what politics is. And given that, specifically, what can he do for Armenians? The first thing to do is to actually accept the status of Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh as an independent region, as an autonomous region. Second, to finally recognize Armenian genocide. The facts are undeniable, and the integrity-based decision needs to happen. This justice is long overdue. And of course, to stop the war, to stop what's happening right now, this ethnic cleansing.
So, life for the Armenian people can be addressed, you're saying, by the president stepping in to broker a peace deal there. Is that what you're calling for?
I'm calling for president to make a very hard decision, an inconvenient decision, but integrity-based decision. We all know he has businesses with Turkey, he has businesses with Azerbaijan, hundreds of billions of dollars. And that is an uncomfortable decision to make when you are doing what's right at own expense. But this needs to happen at some point. This behavior needs to be modeled at some point if he truly wants to make America great.
I appreciate you coming on the show to share your insights about what's going on. I also, my heart goes out to the Armenian people who are right now going through a very, very difficult time and facing a new round of violence that has not been mitigated at all. I know they're calling for a ceasefire. Hopefully they will get to that. But with all that you've been through, I'm grateful that you're able to survive the genocide that took place and the attacks on your people. Certainly, I think the world can learn from those who have been through it and experienced it. So Lucia Moon, thanks for coming on. You're always welcome back here on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Welcome back to the program. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce to you a young man who has been a political activist. He's also participating in the political process, running for office in one of my greatest areas in the world, Harlem, New York, USA. Harlem, USA. His name is Craig Schley, and he's running for the 70th Assembly District there in the state of New York. Craig, good of you to join us today.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Kelly.
And it's an honor to talk to you. I wanted to talk to you about your vision, not only for Harlem, but for America, particularly given the height of things that we're going through with the racial division and, of course, the political division, and then coronavirus.
Right. So let me see if I can address those in sequence. You said actually you're talking about America, my political environment, and the racial environment. As relates to America, look, the United States can thank Donald Trump for two things. One, he pulled the hood off of all the things that we don't like in the United States, from racism on down. And he turned the lights on all the bugs, all the things that we don't like to see. And so throughout the United States, you have the elections like here in this district that people want change, genuine change. And they're not just going for the okie doke or the same old thing is pulling the lever down for the previous person, but they're looking at new representatives with new visions. This is where I and other individuals throughout the United States are running for office and wanting change. And in this district, in the primary, you saw 28 flipped assembly seats, and we anticipate this one to be the same if everything goes our way. And so as it relates to the political environment here, we're running a good campaign. My name is Craig Schley. I'm running for New York State Assembly. I'm an independent Democrat. I had to fight to get on there. They were opposing me. The community says, hey, we can move forward. The beautiful thing about this is that this is a so-called gentrified community. But the issue has never been who's coming into the district, is who's being forced out by the excessive development and the killing of the small businesses and what we are supporting and we're fighting for. And, we want to create targeted homes. We want to make sure that individuals who are out of formerly incarcerated have a full voting rights, even those on parole. And we want to bring in a film industry supported by the federal funding by the Chamber of Commerce. These are basic condensed bullet points. As it relates to the racial context, that's kind of similar to the first issue. We are seeing ourselves in America for what we have been. It hasn't been a fair environment. It's been a racially charged environment because there's been racism that has been actually with us since the founding of this country. And it's an ill that once we get rid of it, we can move forward. But I will say that will require, I think, us to look more deeply than just the reactionaries, the reaction we're having to it, but look at how the Constitution was set up, look at who was not involved in it initially, and then we move toward assessing what we have to do by getting the Constitution changed to reflect the country where we are today.
Yeah, and as it relates to what you're talking about in New York City, of course, has been hard hit by the coronavirus, and it's impacted so many people of color, particularly right there in Harlem, as well as Brooklyn, where so many people have been decimated by this virus. Do you think enough is being done in New York City, particularly in Harlem, to safeguard the Black and brown people who live in those communities?
A fair assessment, our governor has did a fantastic job. I'm not getting into speaking of his local politics or anything else. As it relates to this corona pandemic, our governor has done a fantastic job. As you can see, we're pretty much in good shape, but as one can be in this environment. But moving forward, on the Black and brown issue, what takes precedence is that we're all in this foxhole together. And what's happening right now, what's most important to me, in that when we win on election day, which we intend to, the first thing we have to find something in in the government that could find immediate economic aid for over the 400,000 tenants that are being kicked out of their residence because they couldn't work. And there's a 200,000 impending individuals to be kicked out of their residence. We have to find immediate funding for that. And at the same time, we have to find some just compensation for the landlords who are pressed to push them out because they need the money too. So it's for lack of a better concept, a New Deal type of thing. Maybe people may not understand that, but the government has to step in and take care of its people now with an economic stimulus. And that covers the Black and white issue, and it would help a lot as far as the racial issues are concerned in this state.
You were kind of destined, I would say, even before you were born, to be involved in politics or activism. Tell me about your ancestry and how it so closely mirrors what you're doing now, going out, getting involved in politics from your ancestors.
So a quick background about my answer. My great grandfather, which is my mother's grandfather, and she knew him. He was North Carolina's first state representative of North Carolina. Now, he was born into slavery in Dublin County in 1854. At 3 years of age, he moved with his father to farm in Hanover County, and there they farmed after the Civil War. He was educated in a public school system. By 1884, he became North Carolina's became a North Carolina House of Representative. He served there until the 1890s, where he became Cape Fear's magistrate judge. Thereafter, in 1902, he opened a church and started ministering as an African Methodist Episcopal Church. And thereafter, he served and he died in 1932. And this brings us right here today. My sister also is an elected official in Philadelphia. She's a ward leader. My father was a Teamster rep. I remember my dad always, stopping on the side of the road for people to change tires. And I just been active in the community because of my family. And it's very important to my community that we have this type of legacy and that it continues.
Yeah, and so based on the family dynamic that you have, it's one of service. It's also one of leadership. What today is lacking in national leadership, in your opinion?
The connection to the people or a people and developing from that relationship comes the political representation versus money driving the political process versus the most powerful selecting the individuals to be representing a particular community. Look, I'm a blue collar man with a white collar education. I didn't go to college for the first time till I was in my 30s. I made my money off of my hands and my spine for quite a while until I went to law school and did things and worked off my mind. But as it relates to the community, that's the kind of community I'm from. We have an eclectic type of folks here. I know people, addicts by name. I know doctors by name. And this foments a type of environment that say, hey, you know what? We want this to represent us. We want us to represent us. And that type of politic ought to come back into the process, and where the money should be pushed to the side, and then also having the top down pick what happens to the lower part of the political body. So that's in essence, that's what I think should be happening.
Craig, I appreciate you coming on the program and sharing your insights and your vision for Harlem as well as New York and America. Really appreciate that. And welcome to this program anytime. Win or lose, don't be a stranger to this program. Your insights are very powerful and enlightening, and your background is something that I think we need to remind ourselves of, that we are from legacies of greatness and accomplishments. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly.
And welcome back. I'd like to thank all of the guests who appeared on tonight's program. Especially want to thank you for taking the time out to watch. I appreciate you. In closing, my final word is this: hopefully we learn to be righted, ignited, and united, to not spread fear, but to keep spreading love, freedom, and peace. Good night.
Just give it time, give it time. Get on board. That means you and you and you on the love train. Get on board. All creeds and colors, brothers, all sisters and brothers, and sisters on the love train. Get on board the love train. Everyone's invited. We're all united on the love train. Get on board. All creeds and colors, my sisters and brothers, get on board on the love train. Woo-hoo! Yeah. It's all right. Just give it time. Keep on marching on. Keep on being strong. Get on board the love train, love train. Let's spread